You're listening to the Real Deal Podcast, Episode 8, for the week of May 29th through June 4th, 2016.
Welcome back to The Man Addict for another edition of The Real Deal. I'm Kevin Pauley.
And I'm Brian Hatcher.
And we're taking a look at the biggest film to hit box offices this weekend, as well as some news you can hopefully use on Hollywood and the like. So, Brian, we're going to talk about the big release of this weekend, the Memorial Day weekend, which was X-Men Apocalypse, which can be looked at as either the 9th in the series if you count Deadpool and Wolverine Origins, or the 3rd in a new trilogy, or just the 6th of just overall X-Men films, however you want to look at that. But it is a big film, and it's one we're definitely taking a look at. So, we just saw this Saturday.
Right.
And, you and I both went out immediately and grabbed some food so we could kind of talk about this movie, because it's such a big film. You've had a couple of days to think about it. Where do you stand on X-Men Apocalypse?
Well, I certainly don't feel that the movie deserves the criticism it seems to be getting. It's very polarizing. People either really, really like the movie or they really, really hate it. After reflecting on it, I can see some of the faults of the film.
It's not a perfect film, no. But few films are.
Right. I think one of the problems you're going to run into is that when Marvel Studios has set the bar so high, it's almost unfair to compare movies. Especially since we've seen Civil War, and it did things so well.
Yes.
And certainly in ways that I think perhaps X-Men Apocalypse didn't quite achieve. But I don't think that to its depth, that automatically makes it a bad film.
No.
But I certainly do see the weaknesses in it, and that's something, of course, that we can talk about when we talk about the film.
For me, when I came out of the theater, I felt the way I wanted to feel when I saw X-Men Days of Future Past, which I liked, and you can go back and find our review on it, but you'll see, the thing I talked about was I came out of the theater and I called you immediately and I was like, why didn't I love this movie? Whereas with X-Men Apocalypse, I came out and was like, oh my gosh, I really love this movie. To me, I think the greatest compliment I can give this film is that it feels the most comic book of perhaps all of the X-Men films, honestly. There is some massive epic action that happens in this, and boy, it looks amazing, and it just really feels like panels of a comic book coming to life. You just got some really neat visuals and some really great costumes that feel even more and more like the ones from the comics, not just the black leather from the first movie per se. You're seeing different colors, and you're seeing different takes on the stuff, and it looks really cool. It's a great looking film, that there's no question. Visual effects are very strong. A lot of digital work, because it needed to be. It's a very big film. This is an epically big film. That's probably the best word to describe it, is just epic. It is a big movie. There's a lot going on. We start in Egypt, where we see the original version of In-Saba Nur, who is the being that will become Apocalypse. And we see him doing the body transference to get a new body and to be even stronger. And, man, it's such an amazingly well-done scene. I was just absolutely just captivated by the film from the word go. Seeing Egypt looked really impressive, and, seeing the versions of Apocalypse and his horsemen at the time. And, it just really felt neat to me. I was really into it from the word go. How did you feel?
Well, I certainly, I know some people have said, the ending was a little bit slow. I didn't have a problem with it myself.
No, I neither did I.
I really did. I really did want to get into the story. I wish that in some aspects, along the way, that we would have gotten maybe a little bit more detail.
Yeah, there's definitely some characters that get put off to the wayside.
Yeah.
I won't lie. But the key thing is, I think, that this movie's trying to do, I really feel like if this movie would have been the first X-Men film we'd ever seen, we'd be like, this is the greatest movie ever made.
We would have, if we'd have seen this in the 90s, we'd have been completely blown away.
Or even in 2000, I think we'd have been like, oh my gosh, this is friggin' amazing.
Yeah.
And what I think this film is trying to do, and you can kind of see it in the fact that, we know that Hugh Jackman is going to do one one more Wolverine film, and that's it. So, I think what they're trying to do is start setting up a bunch of the younger characters, the newer characters, and this does take place in the 1980s, other than the stuff at the beginning in Egypt. Right. But it takes place in the 80s, which I think for me is what I really liked about it, because that's where I grew up in, and that's where I was reading about the X-Men. That was my team. Seeing Storm and Cyclops and Jean Grey. Granted, I missed seeing like Colossus and stuff, but we get to see Nightcrawler, and then there's Angel, and and Storm, and it's really neat characters, and of course Professor X. But I feel like they're trying to use this film to lay the groundwork for a new series of films that will have these younger, newer characters, and not. I don't know if we'll ever see Patrick Stewart or Ian McKellen return. I don't know that we'll see Hugh Jackman or Famke Janssen or any of the folks from the original film. So I feel like this film has that task of trying to bring an end to the chapters that we've already had, but set up new chapters, in the comic anthology. So it's got a big job. But let's get into the story here. We take place in Egypt at the beginning. We see what looks like the end of Apocalypse, or in Sabanur, who's luckily never called Apocalypse. And so, we see now we're in the 80s, and, we're seeing Professor X's school is in full swing, new kids are enrolling, and we get some throwbacks to X-Men First Class. We get to see Alex Summers, Havoc, return. We didn't see him really in Days of Future Past, so nice to see him return. And, of course, we know that, James McAvoy is playing Charles Xavier, and McAvoy is phenomenal in the role. As much as Patrick Stewart owned it in the original films, McAvoy flat out owns it now. I mean, it's really his role. What's interesting, and there will be some spoilers in this as far as some aspects of the story, not getting into every little detail, but there are some things you have to kind of talk about what's going on in the story, because there's a lot going on. We see him doing very well with the school. We've got new kids. We see kids like Jubilee, and it's neat to see them in there, and it's just really, really well done. We see Jean Grey, a younger Jean Grey, played by Sophie Turner, who plays Sansa Stark on Game of Thrones, and she's wonderful in it. She's great. So we see like the return of Moira McTaggart, who we hadn't seen since X-Men First Class, and Rose Byrne comes back to play her, and she's kind of uncovered the burial remains of where Apocalypse was buried at the beginning. Now, of course, in 1983, they've found it. There's been a cult of people trying to find him, and so Professor X finds out that she's been involved, and we find out that at the end of X-Men First Class, when they kiss, he's erased her mind, kind of a Superman 2 kind of thing, which Bryan Singer being a Superman fan doesn't surprise me. So she doesn't remember a lot of the adventures that they had together with the whole Cuban Missile Crisis and all that stuff. So he gets to go see her and see what she's been doing, and tries to use this as a way to kind of get back into talking with her, which is kind of fun. On the flip side of the world, though, we've got Michael Fassbender returning as Eric Lehnsherr, or Magneto. And of course, after the events of Days of Future Past, Magneto is definitely a fugitive. He is wanted around the world, so he's living low as a guy working in a smelt factory, and he has a wife and he has a kid, and he is trying to do exactly what Charles always asked him to do, which is try to live a normal life. Don't try to start wars, don't try to do this, just try to be with them and experience life, and just try to be normal, and he's doing that, and he's doing it very well. He's very happy, and it's something we haven't seen of him like ever. And Michael Fassbender just tears it up. I mean, he is absolutely outstandingly good in this movie. Definitely like a central focus point of this story. So we fast forward to where he is involved in a situation at his place after Apocalypse awakes. There's like this big boom, basically, like felt around the world. And at the X Mansion, they think it might have been Jean's powers, because Jean, of course, is still trying to learn how to control them, that she might have done it, but it wasn't her. And when Eric is working in the factory, a guy almost gets covered in molten metal, and he's able to save him, and just briefly uses his powers, but people see it. And of course, now we know that things aren't going to end well for him. So we come to the point where his character has a pivotal moment, and I won't get into it too much, but there is loss for Eric Lehnsherr. And at the same time that he has lost something valuable to him, here comes Apocalypse, and we'll just call him Apocalypse because I don't feel like calling him Sabanur the whole review. So here comes Apocalypse looking for the strongest to be able to make the world a better place, and of course he taps into him, and they start putting together their army, and that's where we see Storm, who is the first that he recruits. He finds her on the streets of Cairo, which is so friggin' cool because she's a little thief on the streets, and he finds her, and he ends up, enhancing her powers. He's enhancing Magneto's powers. We see at the beginning, we see a fight in basically a mutant fight club between Angel and Nightcrawler, which is a really cool fight scene. I was really impressed. And that's where we find out where Mystique has been. She's been kind of laying low as well, not showing her blue, proud, mutant self, but hiding. Because she kind of knows there's probably something more to happen, and she's right. So she helps mutants escape from these fight clubs and things like that, and she's trying to help, she helps get Nightcrawler to Professor X's school, which is awesome. Angel just takes off. But then we find out that Angel has been found by Apocalypse and his crew, and he's now made into Archangel, which is awesome because he's got the big metal wings and the cool suit and some of the facial designs and stuff from the comics. Not the full-blown bald cap stuff, but he looks pretty cool. I mean, he really does.
Right.
And so, he's putting together his army. And then we get to see some mutants that we've never really seen before. We see Caliban, which is awesome because he's like the guy you go to when you're a mutant trying to, get your passports or to get out of the country or to move kind of unseen. He's helping people do that. And, then we find out that he's also got in his back, the back of his room is Psylocke, played by Olivia Munn. And so we start seeing these characters that we've not seen before, and the world of the mutant world is getting bigger in these films. And so Apocalypse is making his army, and he's going to take over the world. And at the same time, Professor X is trying to figure out what's going on, and he's trying to get his students, trying to keep them safe and figure out how to help. So we've got this big, huge film that ends up happening. We've got fight scenes upon fight scenes. We see the return of Quicksilver, and his sequence in this might even be better than that of Days of Future Past. And it even uses Eurythmic's Sweet Dreams, which is awesome. There's so much going on in this movie. So much. That it probably sounds like I'm rambling, but I'm trying to get through all the different plot points before they all kind of wrap up into the final, the final moments. But the cool thing for this for me is that we finally get to see Scott Summers.
Right.
Like a real Scott Summers. And no disrespect to the original films, but Scott Summers was a side character compared to making Wolverine the focus. And here we're seeing him be the Cyclops that I've been waiting for. The Cyclops who will be the leader of this team, who they will listen to. And we see him, we see his powers first manifest, and we see him trying to control them. And there's some really funny, sweet moments with him and Professor X. And then we see him meet Jean Grey. And so we're starting to set the Cyclops Jean Grey stuff, which means we could eventually have a Nathan Summers down the road, which means we could have a Cable. Who's to say? I don't know.
Right.
But we're seeing these moments that, if you're a fan of the comics, especially if you grew up in the 80s, you're starting to see the characters that you know. And you're starting to see them get cemented into this world. So it's really kind of neat to see that all coming together. But again, a lot of stuff going on here. And, Brian, and feel free to chime in at any point. Because there's so much. I'm sure I'm missing something because it's a film I really want to see again, honestly. Much like Civil War, there's so much spectacle the first time you see it. There's just things I know I have missed. I know there are Easter eggs I've missed, and I know I'm just missing stuff. But chime in on what we're talking about. I mean, this is a humongous story.
Yeah,
I mean, it really is.
It is. And I mean, I think when to talk about this film, I do have to kind of mention a few of the things that I feel like where the movie did kind of miss the mark.
Sure.
I think to begin with, it does introduce a lot of characters, and
Yes.
And I think a lot of them did wind up getting short shrift.
Angel in particular.
Psylocke had...
Yeah, Psylocke really doesn't... She's there, and she's cool when she's there, but she doesn't have a whole lot of motivation or anything.
Exactly. And the one problem I have with that is because one of the things that they kind of take away from Apocalypse from the comics is that when he would convert these mutants into his horsemen, there's sort of like a brainwashing that goes on.
Yes.
That they're not exactly who they are. They're being molded into these different characters.
Like war and pestilence and famine and death. Yeah.
Now, because they don't do that, because in a sense these horsemen tend to keep their free will, you kind of have to justify why they join up with Apocalypse. And sometimes you kind of understand it. Sometimes it doesn't.
You totally get Magneto.
You get Magneto.
Like, completely get Magneto.
Yeah.
You can see it with Storm.
The way
he finds her and the way that she's been living, you can see where he could do that. With Psylocke, you don't really get to see a whole lot.
Well, you don't see a lot about her. And, I mean, there's a scene at the end when you're trying to figure out which way she's going to go. And she goes a certain way. And I had to be honest, up to that point, I had no idea what she was going to do because I don't know this character.
Right.
If you've seen her in the trailer, you know as much of this character as
That's true.
as you're going to know at all.
That's very true.
And again, not to try to compare it to Civil War, but I mean, every character had.
Well, and that's the thing about
moment.
Civil War is that they had multiple films to establish this. And
Yeah.
with the X-Men universe, what they haven't been able to do is like, here's the Psylocke movie, and here's the Angel movie,
Right.
and here's the Cyclops movie, and there's so many characters in the
Yeah.
X-Men, and the X-Men have always been a team.
Yeah, well, exactly. But that's the thing, is that when you have that type of a situation, and you've set up your story so that Apocalypse has to talk these characters in to following him, you have to understand these characters. You have to understand their motivations. And
Now, with Angel, you can see. I mean, his wings were destroyed basically in the fight with Nightcrawler, and here's a guy who's willing to say, "Look, I'm going to give you back those. I'm going to make you even better. I'm going to make you more powerful."
Yeah.
And with Angel, when we first see him, he's trapped in a cage. He's having to fight other mutants, literally, or get shot to death.
Yeah.
So he has a reason to hate humanity. I mean, he genuinely does. Now, he is not the Warren Worthington III Angel character.
Right.
He's just Angel. He's not Warren Worthington III at all. He's not the spoiled rich kid who kind of goes through the ropes and learns. But instead, he is just like Angel, and he's been abused and he's been mistreated, and that's his reason for joining the Apocalypse. I mean, his is okay, but Magneto's is definitely the strongest one. And,
and of course they spend a lot of time to develop that.
Well, with Magneto, I mean, it's definitely like it's a heartbreaking thing that takes him to that point. But you, as an audience member, you completely understand it,
right?
And he really is the emotional core of this film. And see, again, with Days of Future Past, they were trying so hard to push Mystique. And like I said, no disrespect to Jennifer Lawrence, she's fine in the role. That's a character I just never cared that much about.
Right.
Like, she's supposed to be more of a background character, not so much at the forefront as like the most important X-Man. No, not at all.
Yeah.
And in this film, it puts more of the impetus on Magneto than it does on her. Mm-hmm. And that was sort of what I wanted more of in Days of Future Past, as well as more of Boulevard Trask, because Peter Dinklage.
Yeah.
But with this, she's in it, and she's really great when she's in it. But she's not overly in it for me to where I didn't enjoy her character. I actually thought she was much better in this than she was in Days of Future Past. So we had that time with Magneto, and we had that time with Professor X. Mm-hmm. I cannot stress enough how fantastic James McAvoy is in the role.
Oh yeah,
and he's so great in this movie. There are some genuinely amazing moments with him in this film.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason why with Psylocke and Archangel, their kind of their lack of development strikes a chord with me so strongly, and it's not just this, because there's other things too, but there's some things that it does so well that when it does it well, when they miss the mark, it's pretty obvious. And I think when you have these strong performances by Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy, when it misses the mark, you really miss the mark. I mean,
now one actor we haven't talked about though is Oscar Isaac, who plays Apocalypse. And honestly, I thought he was really great.
Absolutely.
And I thought, it's one of those things too. When the first pictures of him came out, everybody's like, "Oh, he looks like Ivan Ooze in the Power Rangers movie." And yes, he is very purple looking in those photos. But when you see him color corrected and in motion, I totally every second he was on, I was like, "Yeah, that's Apocalypse." You can't. I mean, everybody's like, "Oh, but you could make him look like the comics more." And I'm like, "Yes, you could," but at the same time, there just comes a point where you can't go too comic book with it,
right?
Because then it just suddenly gets to the point of just kind of ridiculous. If he showed up with a gigantic A belt buckle and stuff, you'd be kind of like,
well, and the thing about it too is that you can be doing mostly motion capture.
Yeah,
he's going to be a motion capture.
And here, at least, Oscar Isaac was there on set with them, and he was someone they could respond to and react to, and he's really great in the part.
He is, and because really this is a very difficult part, because this character has a real danger of becoming a monster of the week.
Absolutely.
Character.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it isn't, that he completely avoided that problem, because I mean, he kind of does villainy things because he's the villain.
Because he's the villain, but his whole thing is he's trying to destroy the world to build a new one. So he's not going to be like the nice guy.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah, I'm not saying he's mustache twirling villain. He's kind of close, but But yeah, I mean, again, Oscar Isaac, he does very well with this role, which again, it's not an easy one. It's a
no,
it's
and he is
another
under
actor.
a lot of prosthetic and makeup and stuff.
Right.
He still gets the Singer made the point of saying he thinks the Apocalypse in this movie, his greatest power is the power of persuasion.
Right.
And if that I can agree. Because he completely makes his point to the mutants when he's bringing them on board and stuff. You're like, yep, I can see where he would totally be able to, like, how he could, in essence, seduce a young, Aurora, who's out there, Aurora Monroe, who's out there, living on her own, stealing to live, in a world hated, because she's a mutant. You can totally see where someone like that would be able to completely pull her over and say, I'm going to make you more powerful. You're going to be able to get back at everybody who's ever wanted to get back at you. Everybody's ever wronged you.
Right.
Now you have that ability. And I will say, at least with Storm, Alexandra Shipp is the actress who plays her. She's fantastic. Mm-hmm. She's so much better than Halle Berry ever was at that part. She has the African dialect. She just looks the part. She's got the friggin' mohawk going on, which is like, that's my Storm, man. That's my Storm. And she's wonderful. I mean, she's really wonderful. She's not on screen a ton, but when she is very, very good. And she holds her own against Oscar Isaac and those other actors.
Oh, yeah.
Other people we need to mention. Nicholas Hoult comes back as Hank McCoy and of course, the Beast. And he's great in these movies. He really is. I really enjoy him so much in that role. He's a really good Hank McCoy. The one thing I will say about X3, which I hated that film, but I really did like Kelsey Grammer as Beast, because in my mind, that's sort of what he always kind of sounded like. And he really was a great Beast. But Nicholas Hoult has done his own thing with this. He's not tried to be like Kelsey Grammer. And I really like what he does with the character. I like that you see that they're building the SR-71 Blackbird jet from the comics in the 80s. It's a friggin' Blackbird jet, man. And it's there. And it's like, yes, it's awesome. Because even he knows that while Professor X believes in peace, you have to be prepared.
Right.
And I like the fact that he's got that, going on. He's got that side of him, too. We definitely got to talk about Evan Peters as Quicksilver, because he's fantastic again. What a great sequence he has in this movie. He's awesome every time he's on screen. But man, his big moment, and of course you'll know it when you see it. Is jaw-droppingly cool. Like it's such a great moment.
Yeah.
And what's cool is this time, unlike Days of Future Past, this time they take him to the final battle, where it made sense for him to be, because that's the whole thing with Days of Future Past. Like, why wouldn't you take him? He's right there. And now they you know what? He might be good to have. Let's take him along. And I'm like, yes, he would be good to have. And he does some really cool shit in this movie.
Right.
He's great. There's just so much in this movie. But like I said, the key thing is, you've got the return of Nightcrawler. Cody Smith McPhee does a wonderful, wonderful job at Nightcrawler. He very much feels like the younger version of Alan Cummings' character. Great accent, the makeup and everything. He looks just like the one from X2. Yeah. Just younger, and wearing the Michael Jackson Beat It jacket, which I thought was kind of BA, not going to lie. So there's like, I will say, I think the one thing the film could have done more with, and it's the thing, I've heard a couple other people say this, and I would agree with this. I wish it would have embraced the 80s a little more. Yeah. Like, I wish you would have seen it a little bit more, because, that was something that was kind of gift wrapped to them. The 80s is such a key time for that team in comics, and just in general, the 80s are a fantastic time, that I wish we would have seen more of the 80s stuff going on. I mean, we do see the kids go to see Return of the Jedi and stuff like that, and that's really great, and there's a cute little one-liner there. And you get to see them kind of be like normal, students kind of getting around and stuff, listening to music and stuff, and there's some music cues that are cool, but I do wish they would have embraced the 80s culture a little bit more. Right. Although it is cool to see Jubilee in her awesome yellow jacket and the cool hair. I mean, she looks great. She really does. So they do some cool things. The costumes are definitely there. Yeah. But I wish you would have seen more, like with the Nice Guys. Okay, the Nice Guys really embraced that 1977 setting and feel. Oh yeah. And I wish this film would have done a little bit more of that with the 83 setting. That's the only real genuine nitpick I would say I really have with it, other than some of the characters getting a little bit shortchanged. But ultimately, all of this leads to a big battle. Right. And so, of course, that's what all these things always go that way. There's always the big ultimate battle, and everybody has to show up and work together. But in this case, they really do some really neat things with their powers in the final battle. I mean, you really see some very cool stuff. And for me, that's where I was really hook, line, and sinker into this film. Like, when they're all there and they're all doing their things and they're using their powers and they're doing their cool moves, and it really just looks like comic book panels come to life. There's some really great moments. Now, one thing we do have to go back, this is spoilery here, but if you've seen the trailers, you know. They do return for a brief stint into Alkali Flats.
Yeah.
Which is where, if you're familiar with the first two films and stuff, that's where the Weapon X program was. And we do get to see Weapon X.
Yeah.
Now, what's awesome about this is I knew Wolverine was going to pop up in the film. There's the trailer where you see his claw come out, and you're like, oh,
right.
Wolverine's going to be in this. What I didn't think we were going to get was the friggin' Barry Windsor Smith Weapon X.
Yeah.
Like with the crazy headgear, the hair going out to here, the gigantic chops, the shorts, no shoes, like tubes all hooked into him and crap. And he is straight up feral when he gets in this movie. There's not one line uttered by Hugh Jackman in this film. Not one. It's all grunts and like yelling. And dude, do you finally get to see him cut loose? Legit. Literally cut loose, with blood and gore and like almost R-rated.
It is.
Level
I mean,
of
it really
violence.
is. It really is sort of a tonal change for this movie because when he shows up, I mean, it gets. Well, you know, this is Wolverine, and they're getting ready, like you say, they're getting ready to do an R-rated Wolverine movie.
Oh,
and
they set that up real nice.
Yeah, I mean the PG. I mean, they really strained the PG-13 there because at that moment there is a real tonal change in this movie. I mean, there's blood splattering on the walls and the windows. I mean, it's crazy.
It's crazy, but it's crazy awesome is what it is, because it is the most Wolverine we've ever seen.
Yeah. I do have to say, I still kind of wish we hadn't seen Wolverine in the trailer. I would have loved...
I agree. That was definitely a studio push to get people in there, just like they've also revealed some of the key powers at the end of this film, which is criminal. Because I had not seen those trailers, thankfully, and there are some moments at the end that I was like, geek tears.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, wow, that's friggin' fantastic. That is absolutely amazing, and I would have been so mad if those things would have been ruined for me. Now, I will say, you don't really understand in the trailer, like, what you're getting with Wolverine. Like, I'm not gonna lie, if you're a fan of the comics, especially in the 90s and stuff, when you see him step out with that headgear on, you're gonna freak. Like, it's so perfect. It's so perfect.
Yeah.
and he just is the feral, scary Wolverine that you've heard about. You've seen glimpses of him, like mainly in X2 during the attack on the mansion. But my God, he is flat out like scary Wolverine. Like, my God, that man's an animal, Wolverine.
Yeah.
And there's some really cool stuff going on there. So the Alkali Flat stuff was kind of cool to see that. It was a nice callback to the first two films. And you also see Colonel Stryker, the guy who played him, I believe, is the same guy from X-Men First Class, is back in that role too.
I believe so.
So there's a lot going on in this movie. My God, it's so much in this movie. And I really do want to see it again so I can really kind of capture it all. But they all meet to the big final battle. And my God, there's so much that happens in that battle. You really get to see like Cyclops cut loose, man. I mean, like really like take off the shades and start blasting stuff. You get to see Storm using like, her powers. You get to see Archangel's wings like slicing through things and shooting feathers, and you get to see Beast jumping all around, and Psylocke using her friggin' blades and her psychic blades are like a psychic whip, and it's nuts. It's crazy. And Magneto is just like magnetizing the planet to rip apart, and oh God, it's crazy. It's a freaking crazy movie. It's a crazy movie. But the resolution of it is fantastic. Okay, we are going to get into spoiler territory here, so I'm just going to have to, because I have to talk about this ending.
Okay.
Or do you not want to?
I don't. There's the part at the end. I don't know we should need to go there. I really don't.
Okay, well then I won't. But I will say this:
save them something.
You do get to see Professor X, let's just say on his own terms.
Yeah. How
he would deal with Apocalypse. And it's BA. That's all I'm going to say. James McAvoy sells that sequence like nobody's business. And friggin' Sophie Turner as Jean Grey is magnificent. Magnificent in that final battle. And then of course we wrap things up with them moving forward with the new team.
Right.
And we get to see the friggin' Danger Room. I'm just going to throw that out there. Yeah. The Danger Room. It's all you got to know, and you know what you're looking at as soon as you see it. You're like, oh, that's what I think it is, and you're right, it is. It's the friggin' Danger Room. So yeah, it really does set up everything for them to be like this new team. younger team,
right?
And they'll be able to really push forward on who they are and what makes them tick even more in future films. They have already said that the next film will be taking place in the 90s,
right?
Which will be kind of interesting because they'll probably look more like the Jim Lee version in the reboot there in the 90s, which would be kind of cool. I wonder if we'll see like Gambit or people like that, But for me, I mean, this movie is so gigantic. It really is. But I was just geeked out watching it. Like, I just was genuinely a happy comic book nerd / movie nerd watching this movie. For me, it stands up with X2 and X-Men First Class on just the sheer entertainment. But there's the emotional investment in the characters for me that's enough there where I need it to be. And it looks and sounds and feels really great. I mean, it really does. The score by John Ottman is wonderful. You still hear that Michael Kamen theme from the original films, which is really cool that they kept that. There's again, it's such a big movie. Now, it is PG-13, and it definitely pushes the boundaries of PG-13. It does have its one obligatory F-bomb, and it's kind of funny where it comes. And like I said, when Wolverine cuts loose, boy, it's there's even like at the beginning in Egypt, there's a guy who gets like taken out by one of the Four Horsemen where I was like, yeah. I mean, like I was like, oh, that's awful. Yeah. That really just happened, and that's awful. Yeah. So there are some like if you're taking the kids to this one, if they've not watched the other ones, I don't think I would just throw them into the mix with this one. Now, this film, I will say this, it does require you to do your homework. You have to have watched X-Men First Class and X-Men Days of Future Past. It really, truly relies on you having watched those two films. It would not hurt you to have X-Men and X-Men 2 under your belt as well. Forget about X-Men 3, because Days of Future Past fixed that. And forget about X-Men Wolverine Origins, because that film is just trash. And you don't have to have Deadpool. So you can just go into this, as long as you've got the current trilogy, X-Men First Class and Days of Future Past, you have to have those under in your background before you go see this movie, because man, it really talks to you like you know them. It'd be like going to see Return of the King and having not watched The Fellowship of the Ring of the Two Towers. Right. It'd be like, what the hell is all this? X-Men Apocalypse is a big, crazy, wonderful, comic booky, loud, gigantic, explosive movie. I mean, it's everything you expect in a summer blockbuster.
Oh yeah,
it's got more emotional depth than you expect. Not to the level of like a Civil War or something quite like that. But there is emotional investment in this. Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy alone will make sure of that for you. But I will say, to me, there were so many comic booky geek moments in this movie that it could be on par with something like a Civil War or something on that level with regards to just all those moments where you're like, oh my gosh, they really just did that. I finally got to see that happen. Or man, I'm so glad to see that happen again. Like you really get some really fun comic book geek moments. So, for me, this film definitely gets a recommendation for me.
Right.
I highly recommend this film, and it's definitely one. If you have any interest, by God, see it on the biggest screen you can see it. Do not wait for this to come on Blu-ray at some Redbox thing. No. You have to see this as big as you can. If you're a fan of these films, if you've liked the other films, do yourself a favor and see this as big as you can. Now, we did not see it in 3D.
Right.
We saw the 2D version, which I think is fine because it's a very dark movie. There's a lot of crazy action in it that I don't think would translate well to 3D.
Yeah, I think that especially in the final battle scene where everything's kind of gone gray.
Yeah.
Stuff is going to get muddied and blurred.
I mean, you can see there are moments that would have been neat in 3D that they did, like stuff kind of pointing at you and stuff like that. But they're so few and far between that I don't think it would be worth the upcharge. No. Unless you just really like 3D, then hey, go for it. But honestly, you can totally see this in 2D and it will totally do you fine. But do see it on the biggest screen that you can. So as we're wrapping up discussion on this, Brian, your thoughts as we close up on X-Men Apocalypse?
Well, what I'll say is, as far as if I were going to give this movie a grade, I think I vacillate depending on my mood to whether I would give it a B- or a C+. I enjoyed the film. I would certainly recommend the film. I think the biggest problem I have with it is that it does, again, going back, it does things so well that when it missteps, it's really noticeable. I mean, it develops some characters so well, and other characters gets the absolute short shrift. We get some great special effects, especially with Quicksilver.
Oh yeah,
and that
the macro effects they do in his
absolutely
stuff is fantastic.
So when the CGI is really cheesy, it's really noticeable.
But see, I didn't really think there was anything that cheesy. What to you stood out so bad?
Well, anytime they dealt with, well, a couple of things. Number one, whenever they did with macro effects, there's some moments where some very large set pieces happen in Egypt that, to me, just looked pretty. And again, I don't want to go into too much detail, but there are some moments. There's some moments with Psylocke that are. They look really cartoony and not very realistic. And part of that has to do with they did kind of gray out the fight scene to cover some of this stuff, but a lot of it to me looked pretty cartoony, especially when you look at these wonderful scenes, with Magneto, these scenes with Quicksilver, and I mean some of the costuming was great. You look at Nightcrawler, fantastic.
Oh man, yeah, he's awesome.
And then you look at Beast when he goes into Beast mode, and I'm sorry, but I look at that character and I'm just thinking he's wondering how you get to Sesame Street. Not the best kind of setup for that character. I have to say that Kelsey Grammer's Beast makeup
looked good. No,
his Beast makeup was, I think,
he is like the saving grace of that film for me. Honestly.
Yeah, absolutely, and not to say that you should, hey, X3 was a much better film than this. Not at all.
I'll punch you right now if you say
that.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say that. But again, for me, it's. I enjoyed the film. I would certainly recommend it. I would certainly recommend seeing it in a theater. For me, it's just a matter of it's kind of polarizing. What it does in certain aspects, it works really well. But I think that, to me, that when it misses the mark. Just the fact that it did so well in other aspects, in the same kind of a thing, it's like it hits when it hits the target, it definitely hits the target, and when it misses, to me it just makes it that much more obvious when it misses. But
That's
again,
fair.
I would definitely say, yeah, this is definitely a film to check out. I would certainly give it a recommendation.
I think your opinion on this is the opinion I had for Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
That the stuff in that film that really worked for me. The stuff that did not did not. Even though I'd still recommend the film. I think you and I have switched places basically. Where you were on Days of Future Past and where I was.
Yeah.
Switch that over. And
I think so.
I think what it is for me. Because this was sort of my era, this was my group of X-Men for the most part. I was able to overlook those small things. To me, I mean, I'm not saying shortchanging a character is a small thing. I do wish they would have been able to do more with Angel and Psylocke. I completely agree with that. Totally agree with that. But everything else was so good for me.
Yeah.
That yes, I did notice that they got shortchanged, but it never took me out of enjoying the film.
Oh yeah.
Everything in it to me that was so good that a lot of it was so good it made up for the things that didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think that's where I was so hooked into it from the Egyptian scene. There was just something about it. The music is so powerful and the imagery is so neat and. Seeing the alien-looking technology that they had for Apocalypse was like, but they really got that. That's like, he's not just a mutant. There's something else there, and they really show that. Seeing that stuff that you kind of saw glimpses of it in the '90s cartoon and in the comics. Seeing that is really, 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 really cool.
Oh yeah, and the thing about it is, I as a writer and all that, I have this sort of ability to kind of split myself off.
Sure.
When I'm watching the film, I'm enjoying it. And we talked about how much we enjoyed the film, and then, that cools off and then the critic comes up and it's like, well, no, I didn't like that and that didn't work.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean...
No, I'll freely admit, it is not a perfect film.
It's not.
And in a summer that gave us, Civil War...
Right.
And The Nice Guys, where you've got great character development and stuff like that. No, it's not going to win an Academy Award for Best Screenplay. It's not even going to be in the discussion for it.
Yeah.
But for me... Like I said, for me, this film was like the most comic book X-Men film they've made yet.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think that's where it enchanted me so much with that vibe.
Oh, yeah.
That for me, it allowed me to not overlook it, it just allowed me to not dwell upon the nitpicks I had.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, most of the people I've seen review this have said sort of the same things. Now, for me, I think it was a matter of, like I've talked about with the new Ghostbusters film, in this case, it was like a cast and crew and visual effects team and score elevated, what was an okay script or a pretty good script, it elevated it to something a little bit more.
Right.
it set it up on the shelf a little bit higher than it would have if you didn't have some of those things. And that's where, to me, I'll say the film works. Now, I will say this, because it is in pairing with Marvel, there is, of course, the awesome Stan Lee. Has an awesome little cameo. And it's not a goofy cameo. It's actually a really poignant kind of moment. And it's a cameo with him and his wife, which is awesome. It's a simple little moment, but it's really sweet. But do stay after the credits.
Of course.
And if you are an X-Men nerd, you're going to see something there that's going to make you go, what? Like, you are going to freak when you see it. And if you don't follow it, you're going to be like, well, what the hell was that and why is that important? If you do follow the comics, though, oh my God. That's all I'm going to say.
And if you're not a comic book fan, Google it.
Fair enough. Google it. Because it's something that I would have never thought they would attempt to do. But I can also say that X-Men Apocalypse is something I would have never thought I would ever see.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd see, like, Apocalypse on screen. Like, I just never thought that would happen. And it worked. It worked very well for me, actually. So, in the end, I liked it more than Brian, but we both agreed that it's definitely worth your time to go see it. If you are a fan of the series in particular, do go check it out.
Absolutely.
If you're a fan of the X-Men, I think most fans who are diehard comic book fans of the X-Men will say that they don't like the films too much because they kind of change things up. And I will say that this will not do you any different favors, but I will say that this one, I think, feels more on par with the comic book vibe than any of the other ones have before it. So on that level, it may win you over a little bit more. But if you've not cared for the other ones, this one's not going to break the bank for you. It's not going to change it up.
Right.
But if you have enjoyed the other ones, go see this. By all means, it's made for you, man. You'll really dig it. Bryan Singer and his team really do a great job of keeping that universe interesting and expanding it.
Yeah.
Which is a tough job to do when you're now technically 9 films into a franchise. You know, it's crazy, but they're making it work. So, kudos to 20th Century Fox for letting Bryan Singer and his crew do their thing and not 20th Century Foxing it. Like they did with Fantastic Four and such. So that's kind of nice. It's nice to see that. But we'll move on now to news of the week. But again, do check out X-Men Apocalypse.
Alrighty. So, first item. Skyfall Inspector Director Sam Mendes has announced he will be stepping down as the director of the James Bond movie franchise. With Daniel Craig also rumored to be stepping away from the franchise, moviegoers have a completely revamped James Bond series to look forward to down the road, with both Jamie Bell and Tom Hiddleston rumored to be the frontrunners to take on the mantle of 007.
Well, see, I've also heard Michael Fassbender.
I've heard that.
And I'm fine with really any of those, honestly.
Yeah.
I have no issue with any of those. Jamie Bell is a great actor. Tom Hiddleston's a fantastic actor. And Michael Fassbender basically is James Bond in X-Men First Class when he's hunting down the evil Nazis. I could have watched a whole film like that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm fine with any of those. Now, the director is going to be an interesting choice, though, because Sam Mendes, really, I mean, Skyfall and Spectre are just amazing looking and amazing directed films. Now, Spectre definitely is weaker than Skyfall for me, but man, I love Skyfall. Like nobody's business do I love Skyfall. I could argue it might be the most James Bond movie of the bunch. It perfectly blends the camp of the 60s and 70s with the action styles of today. I thought Sam Mendes really blended that beautifully in that movie.
Yeah, well, I think Mendes is making a good decision to step away right now because
I would agree.
I think the biggest criticism that Spectre got from critics was it was a paint-by-numbers James Bond story.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Which, the thing about it is it's the numbers that he put down, but at the same time, it's like, well, it's time to maybe freshen it up a little bit, get a different viewpoint.
It's the same thing when they brought Mendes on to do, Skyfall. It's that kind of shakeup. You need that. And, I think Daniel Craig has arguably, made himself the case as to be the best Bond ever. I mean, he's definitely had a successful string of films from Casino Royale all the way to Spectre. And, I adore Casino Royale. And, man, do I love Skyfall. So I have really enjoyed Craig in the role. But I'm fine. He seems kind of burnt out on it, and that's fine, man. Move on. That's cool. You've done your time. You've done your service. Tom Hiddleston would be a very interesting choice, but Jamie Bell would be really cool. I liked his motion cap work in The Adventures of Tintin. Yeah, I thought he was great, and that voice is great. He'd be a wonderful Bond. It would be a very different Bond. Yeah, and that's the thing. No matter who they cast, it's going to be a very different Bond. And Daniel Craig sort of had that more real world Bond. That guy who we saw become the James Bond we know. He starts off as that blunt object to become someone a little more precise, a little more precision there when he needs it. And so it'll be very interesting to see Will they keep, Ray Fiennes as M? Will they keep the same guy as Moneypenny? Will they bring those people back? Or will they just shuffle the cards and just start anew? Now, I would love to see Ray Fiennes come back because I think he's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Huge Ray Fiennes fan, and I thought he was great as him. So I'd love to see him keep in that role. But I'll be very interested to see the tone that they'll take with a new Bond. Yeah. Will they, because you can't bring someone else in and make them Daniel Craig.
No, and you wouldn't want to.
And you wouldn't want to. Each Bond has been his own thing.
Yeah.
So I'll be very interested to see tonally what it does to the series. Yeah. I really will.
Alrighty. Luc Besson has released photos from the set of Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, which is scheduled for 2017 release. The movie stars Dane DeHaan and Cara Delevingne as special operatives for the government of the human territories charged with maintaining order throughout the universe, which I believe this is based off of a comic.
It is. It's based off of a French comic, and I have seen some footage of it. Like behind the scenes stuff. They had it on MTV, I believe, for the movie awards.
Yeah.
And anytime Luc Besson is behind the camera, it's going to get my attention.
Oh yeah.
He may not always make perfect films, but by God, he makes pretty films.
Yeah.
And the dude knows action.
Yeah.
Of that, there is no question. You cannot deny that he is one of the best action directors in the history of the game.
Yeah.
Go look at The Professional. Go look at La Femme Nikita. Go look at The Fifth Element.
Mm-hmm.
Hell, go look at Lucy. Lucy's a crazy film. My God, when it gets down to kick-ass time, it's kick-ass.
Well, one thing they're saying about this film is that this Valerian film is going to be part of a series, and they says it really does have a sort of Fifth Element feel to it.
You can tell in the designs it has that. It has a very Mobius kind of look to it, which I love.
Yeah.
And Luc Besson is a huge fan of metal hurlant, or heavy metal in France. You can look at the Fifth Element and see it all over it.
Right.
And it's very painfully obvious. Not bad painfully, just as painfully obvious. But yeah, this is one of those things where I'm interested to see how it will do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it'll be a big hit here. I just don't. None of his films ever truly, really have, with the exception of The Professional made pretty good money. The Fifth Element made okay money, but not the money they thought it was going to make with being a Bruce Willis starring film in 1997.
Right.
I think Lucy did really well, though.
Yeah.
Because I think that's part of the impetus for why Scarlett Johansson got the push for Ghost in the Shell and why they're pushing forward now on the Black Widow film.
Yeah.
So, he's had hits, but this is so not American that I don't think it will do well in the States.
But it's funny because
but international box office has become so important now that it could be a big
and because there's a good deal of not that American type movies coming out now, and I'm going to be talking about another one here in the news. But I mean, with that, and of course, when you say Ghost in the Shell, and some other live action based off of anime stuff that's coming out, it's kind of interesting how we're if this movie can become a hit, hopefully we can see more of that type of stuff get a little better.
Where I think it'll hurt, though, is that it doesn't have a major star.
Yeah.
Dane DeHaan is a fine actor, especially if you've seen Chronicle. Man, he's great in that.
Yeah.
And he was good for what he had to do in Amazing Spider-Man 2. He just got bum-rushed into a role that they didn't need to bring the Green Goblin into it. And they
right.
did. But he did the best he could with what he had.
Exactly.
So he's a good actor. And there's nothing wrong with him. It's just he's not a name. He's not like a box office name. He's not a bankable star. Now, that's the nice thing about Luc Besson is he's not really caring about that. He's looking for who fits the part.
Exactly.
Right? And that's who he's going to cast because Luc Besson doesn't care about that kind of stuff.
Right.
So, to me, I'll definitely see anything Luc Besson does. So I'll definitely be there.
Oh, yeah, we'll be
his
there.
name alone pretty much ensures I'll be there opening weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know, no matter what, visually it's going to be unlike anything I've seen in a while.
Oh, absolutely.
Because he just delivers every time. So, yeah, that's one of those I'm definitely interested in seeing, like, the first trailer for it. Like, really getting a chance to see the tone for it, the feel for it, the universe they're building there, because it's a big world, or big universe, from what I understand of the comics. And I have not read them, but I've read about them. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like a really neat universe. I just don't know how it will play out in film. And will it be a big enough hit to spawn a series, which I think would be really cool to see Luc Besson do a series.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed. Okay, well, some movie release dates have been shifted around this week. Maze Runner: The Death Cure has finally been given a January 2018 release date. The movie was delayed due to an accident on set that seriously injured Dylan O'Brien, the movie's lead.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so it looks like he's back to filming or will be back to filming soon, so they've had to knock it off about a year.
Well, the funny thing is, though, back in the day, you'd hear January and you're like, oh, God, that's a kiss of death for it. But, we've seen more and more films become, like, hits.
Yeah.
In January now, so that film could actually do really well in that time slot.
Well, hopefully so. I mean, obviously, because they had to delay the film, there were other films they already had planned for that summer slot that they couldn't really shift around too much, but we'll see what happens with that. Shane Black's The Predator has been moved up to a February 9, 2018 release.
I will be so anticipating that film because, well, it's Shane Black and it's Predator.
Yeah.
And Shane Black is in Predator, and Predator is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's what will help you put hair on your chest, as it did for me in the 80s. It's tremendous. So that film just excites the hell out of me. I have no idea who's in it, what it's going to look like, or anything, but it's Shane Black, and it's Predator.
Yeah.
That's kind of like one of those where it's just, here's my money. Just go ahead and
and again, they decided to bring it up a little bit earlier to February, which is interesting because, again, February sounds like, well, that's the kiss of death.
Yeah, Deadpool kind of figured out, nope, not necessarily the case.
It's a good film will make money wherever.
Yep, and I think that could be a good push for that.
Okay. Alita Battle Angel has been moved to a July 20th, 2018 opening. The James Cameron Passion Project, it was recently announced, will have Robert Rodriguez taking the directing reins from Cameron and will star Rosa Salazar as the title character.
This will be interesting because, I love James Cameron. Not all of his films are perfect, but by God, that man, when he makes a movie, he makes a friggin' movie. He creates new technology all the time for every film he makes. It's almost like, I want to make a movie. What new technological boundary can I push? Okay, let's go make a movie that does that. He's amazing at that. And I love James Cameron in science fiction. So Battle Angel Alita is something he's talked about for years, but he's now got so into the Avatar stuff and the multiple films happening there that this eventually had to be given off to someone else. Now, what I'm interested in is the fact that it's given to Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah. Now,
Robert Rodriguez, we all know if you go back early in his career and look at El Mariachi and Desperado, that dude can make really cool kinetic cinema.
Oh, absolutely.
Look at Sin City.
Yeah.
Just a stunning film.
Yeah.
In every facet. It's a great looking movie. It's a great paced movie. It's a great acted movie. It looks amazing. So you have two guys who really have good visual flair.
Yeah.
Partnering up. Two very huge artistic minds. Mm-hmm. What I'm interested in, though, is that Robert Rodriguez has done so many films where he's done it all at Troublemaker Studios.
Yeah.
Everything's been done digitally in, his place. He's not had to go anywhere. He's not had to, do location shoots so much as just shoot it there in Austin. What'll be nice is seeing him with a huge scale project where he's going to have to get out of his Troublemaker Studios and go big.
Yeah.
And really go big. So it'll be nice to see him with a budget, that's going to be, I'm sure for this film is going to be gigantic. It has to be.
Oh, yeah.
But to see him working with someone like James Cameron, who will sit on his ass to get the film he wants made.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And it has, like you said, it has been a passion project for Cameron.
Yeah.
He is going to be ghost directing this film. In a lot of ways, like the Steven Spielberg, Tobe Hooper thing on Poltergeist, you're going to see a lot of that, I got a feeling. But it will be nice to see Rodriguez take on something that big.
Yeah.
He's one of those directors, I will always watch what he does because he's just fun to watch.
Yeah.
I can say as a parent, the Spy Kid films are a blast. They're total fun films to watch with your kids. And my son loves them. Absolutely loves them. But they're great films. They're very fun, cute movies. They really are. So he can bring it. But, I thought Predators was actually a pretty solid film. I really did. It's not perfect, but it's a good Predator movie. Mm-hmm. It's not as good as the original, but I think it definitely is better than the second one.
Yeah.
And I even like Predator 2. I do. I'll freely admit it. I like it. It's not perfect, but I enjoy it.
And it's all better than Alien versus Predator.
Everything's better than Alien versus Predator. Yeah. Yeah. It totally surpasses those films. So the thing is, he definitely makes good-looking movies, and he makes well-paced movies, and they're fun, and usually they're very light. They're kind of like they're really great popcorn movies. That's the best way to put it. He's never made a movie where you're invested in the emotion of the characters so much. Maybe a little bit in Desperado or El Mariachi, but that's about the extent of it. Most of it's just been very fun and just what's he going to do next? Just crazy stuff. So to see him working with someone on the level of James Cameron, this will be a very interesting, and it will be a very not trying to sound like this is a bad thing, it will be a very non-Robert Rodriguez film.
Yeah.
It'll be a very unique place for him.
Well, the thing about it, of course, James Cameron did handpick Robert Rodriguez
Yes.
for this project, and I think Robert Rodriguez, he's as a director, I think that he's probably looking at this as a great opportunity to learn, and
Yeah.
I think he's going to really take to this, and I think it's going to help him. I think the movies that he's going to be able to make after that,
Yes.
and just what he's going to learn from this project, I think is really exciting.
He is someone that I've always said needed a big budget project.
Yeah.
Like, because he's just got such a great energy to his film. Even when his films are his films can be hit and miss. But when he hits, like we talked about X-Men Apocalypse, when he hits,
Yeah.
my God, does the boy hit.
Yeah.
When he misses, though, you definitely notice it. I mean, you feel like, oh, man, a
Yeah.
tighter script would have worked better here. Or
Yeah.
just a little bit different choice of something would have worked better.
Well, I mean, a lot of people, and I've talked to screenwriters and all, and they always say that Robert Rodriguez, the biggest problem that he's had with his movies is the fact that because he's so insular, and because he does everything himself, he's kind of swimming in his own pool.
Yes, I agree completely.
And pulling him out of that, I think, is going to help him to
take
grow.
him out of his safety bubble.
Yeah.
Pop the bubble, get out there and give him something huge that he can let all of his talents be unleashed upon.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, the idea of Robert Rodriguez directing a gigantic budget science fiction, magnum opus,
Yeah.
is exciting as hell.
Yeah.
Knowing that he's got James Cameron producing it is even more exciting.
Yeah.
This is a film that I will definitely be keeping a watch on and definitely anticipating because it's such a cool story. It is something that James Cameron's talked about for so long, and knowing that those two minds are going to come together on this movie, how can you not want to see that film succeed?
Oh, I can't wait.
I mean, if you're a film geek worth your salt, you've got to be salivating with the idea of that film.
And again, at this point, we're going to have seen, probably Ghost in the Shell by then. I'm trying to remember.
Probably. It seems like that's been on a pretty fast track.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, they're already
trying
shooting.
to capitalize on her with the whole Marvel stuff. I think they're really trying to capitalize on Scarlett Johansson.
So the idea of live action anime is not going to be something completely new.
No, it won't be. No.
And I think, so I think the market's really...
To be honest, I'm way more anticipating that than I am Avatar 2.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed the first Avatar. I really did. I don't think it's a phenomenal film, but I think it's definitely an interesting film. It's fun to watch. It does what I wanted it to do. It's not perfect, but it's fun.
Yeah.
But this, now, Battle Angel Alita, though, could be like Aliens level big. Like that kind of intensity and emotion and stuff could be really something
huge
to see.
mech action.
Yeah, dude.
Oh, my goodness.
So you think about that. I mean, you look at like what they did with Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
And now you imagine with someone like James Cameron and Robert Rodriguez jumping on that. My gosh.
Yeah,
that's
ready.
Exciting as hell.
I am ready.
Yeah, no joke.
Okay, now the last move, Fox has also moved two of its superhero film release dates around, delaying one from January 12th, 2018 to March 2nd, 2018, but moving up one from July 13th, 2018 to June 29th, 2018. Now, what films they are, we don't know. That they've moved
that's right. They're still kind of being hush-hush on those projects.
Yeah. So they've moved the projects around, but we don't know what they are yet.
My gut feeling is one of them is going to be an X film. I don't think it'll be like a Bryan Singer X-Men film, but I think it'll be an X film of some sort. It might be Deadpool. Might be... it could be Deadpool 2. Because they might now give Deadpool the summer launch because now that they've seen how well it did in February, they might be thinking, man, imagine if we could get some of those summer dollars.
That might be the June 29th release.
I could see that being a June 29th release in time for the holiday weekend of the 4th of July. Yeah, I could see them pushing Deadpool to that. My question is, are they going to try another reboot of the Fantastic Four? And if they do, is that what the other film is?
In March? I don't know. They've got plenty of time. I mean, obviously they're going to have to make another one if they're going to keep the rights, but they still got time on it.
Here's my thing, man. After looking at the success of Spider-Man and Civil War and seeing how Sony is now going to have like Robert Downey Jr. and even Chris Evans has said he wants to pop up in Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah.
Why would you not be talking to Marvel about, hey, you guys are really good at like these team movies. maybe we should partner up on the Fantastic Four. Wouldn't it be great to bring them into your universe? And then you can put them in the big Infinity War stuff. And then you can also have, Iron Man stop by and see Reed Richards and hang out at the Baxter Building. That would be a dream come true for fans.
Yeah.
Because I know if Kevin Feige got a chance to do a Fantastic Four film, A, we'd finally get the Doctor Doom that we all deserve and have been waiting for.
Yeah.
And B, friggin' Doctor Doom. That's all you really get.
Yeah.
Doctor Doom would be amazing in that universe. Well, be friggin' amazing in that universe.
Well, the thing about it too is, I don't know what's going on at Fox, but there seems to be some sort of a rift between Fox and Marvel.
Probably Marvel's just mad about the fact that how did you screw up the Fantastic Four that badly?
Yeah.
Like how? How did you screw that up that badly?
Yeah. But I don't see them getting together. I wish that were the case.
Boy, I really wish
I would, because I love the fact.
Is one of those films maybe the Wolverine film? But see, that's filming right now, so I can't think of it being there.
No, because I think that they've already got a release date for that. But I don't know. It's one of those things. It's like we're not going to know until we know, I guess. But
it could be one of the Bryan Singer X-Men films. It's possible. I mean, that's still 2 years away. It's not impossible. We'll see.
We'll see what happens. Okay, now next item. Kingsman: The Golden Circle has
cannot wait.
Yes, they've announced a new cast member.
I saw that, and
Jeff Bridges. Jeff Bridges confirmed on his Twitter account he'll be joining Taron Egerton, Mark Strong, Halle Berry, Channing Tatum, and Julianne Moore in the 20th Century Fox era.
Sir Elton John.
Sir Elton John's going to be in it. Yes.
Let me tell you right now, Kingsman, one of my favorite films of last year. A film that completely came out of the woodwork and just blew me through the back of the theater.
It was amazing.
In my top 5 films of last year, Kingsman sat up in that list. Matthew Vaughn made like the perfect James Bond, like the campy James Bond homage, and set it in present day, and it just worked.
It was good. Yeah,
on every level, that film worked for me. I mean, and there are rumors that Colin Firth might be back. And that excites me because I can't wait to hear what kind of cool technobabble like in Britain that they've got to bring him back to life. I don't care.
Yeah,
friggin' Harry is the character, man. He's the man.
Yeah.
I want to see more Harry Hart. Plain and simple. That film, though, seriously, will be like an absolute anticipated film for me. If you have not seen Kingsman, jump on it immediately. If you liked Kick-Ass and liked what Matthew Vaughn brought to that and what he brought to X-Men First Class. Imagine if you combined those things with a very hard R. Yeah. I will say this. It wears that R like a badge of honor.
Yes.
Like Kill Bill level violence, man. It's ridiculous. But, oh my God. It's outstanding. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Samuel L. Jackson is one of the funniest friggin' things in the history of anything in that movie.
Yeah.
And you've got a lady who's got friggin' like blades for feet, and she's awesome. And you've got tons of heads exploding and Mark Hamill and it's just amazing. It's a friggin' amazing film, man. I mean, you got Michael Caine and Colin Firth and it's Mark Strong, and it's friggin' amazing. If you've not seen it, go see Kingsman. It's I can't imagine anyone who's not prudish not enjoying that film. I genuinely can't. My wife went just on a whim to see it with me, and she thought it was hilarious. Thought it was great. She was like, "That was a really fun movie."
Oh yeah,
and it is. It's a genuinely fun action film.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So yeah, dude, I'm all and just throwing Jeff Bridges into it. Of course, man. Just here, go ahead and take cash, print my ticket, and when the movie's ready, I'll go see it.
There you go.
That movie will be totally at the top of my list to go see.
Oh yeah, we'll certainly be reviewing it here.
I guarantee you that one.
Yeah, so wait on that. It'll be coming. Okay, we'll add a new name to the list of naysayers on Batman v Superman. Jeremy Irons.
I saw that, and I was like, man, now if even Alfred's saying you got a bloated film, you got a bloated film, dude.
Well, during an interview with the Daily Mail, this is how he answered the issue of the negative press the movie has received. Quote, deservedly so. I mean, it took $800 million, so the kicking didn't matter, but it is sort of overstuffed. It was very muddled. I think the next one will be simpler. The script is certainly a lot smaller. It's more linear, which for me, that's good news.
That'll be the Batman film that he's working on, obviously, with Ben Affleck and Jeff Johns, which that right there should say, if that sentence doesn't get you excited about that film, I don't know what will.
Yeah.
Because, as we've said, when we reviewed the film, Jeremy Irons and Ben Affleck are so friggin' great together. Like, genuinely great together.
Yeah.
Could arguably be the best Batman and Alfred you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, easily. It has to be in the discussion. And because it's friggin' Jeremy Irons. who just really brings his A game to this. Like he could have easily phoned it in like Dungeons and Dragons, but he didn't.
No.
Because he knows he's got something kind of building up here, and he does a really great job. So yeah, but he's right. Everything he said is completely why the film didn't work for us. And the idea of a Batman film, a solo film,
yeah,
that's just those guys working on it. Yeah, man, that's the film I'm waiting for.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Because and hopefully this could be something to help kind of turn his franchise around. Definitely,
yes, it needs it, and that sounds awesome.
Oh yeah. Okay, so let's talk movie box office. The box office, even though they did better than they did last year, they still said that this was pretty soft and underperforming.
Yeah, a lot of people travel on Memorial Day, so I don't think it's quite the box office push that it used to have.
Right.
I think it's now very much like summer starts at the beginning of May. Actually, it kind of starts more in April now.
Oh yeah.
So it's not like you have to wait until Memorial Day, which used to be the case. Memorial Day is when you kicked off the summer season, that's when your first big movie came out.
Right.
Well, now you've got big movies coming out in March and April. So I think it's just kind of lost that luster a little bit.
It has, and I think part of the problem is, it wouldn't have been so bad except for the fact that these were films that the studios had a lot of high hopes for.
Yes, they did.
X-Men Apocalypse falls short of the Future Past opening weekend by about $30 million.
Yeah.
So
But I think like with the Batman v Superman thing, I think what we're starting to see though is people are really looking at Rotten Tomatoes and saying,
yeah,
well, gosh, it doesn't sound like a very good movie. I'm not, and I understand that because it's not cheap to go to the movies. It's not. I totally understand that. But at the same time, as we'll tell you on our show, yes, we critique films, but we're not the end-all be-all.
Right.
So by all means, if you're interested in seeing a film, go see it because you might see something differently that we don't. And there might be a film that we didn't like that you might totally love, and vice versa. We might really like a movie that you hate. So, it's one of those things. Everything is subjective. So don't let Rotten Tomatoes be like the thing that makes you make or break a film. If you want to see it, go see it. Take the time to go see it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Again, as well as X-Men Apocalypse did, the big news on the charts at number 2 is going to be Alice Through the Looking Glass. It came in second at $28 million.
Man, that's a huge. That first Alice went on like $400 million.
Yeah, and it's like 100 and some million. Its opening weekend.
Yeah, it was
4-day total
money.
Yeah, it's not even half of the X-Men's opening domestic, and it looks like it's on its way to being Disney's first bomb of the year.
Which is, they've had a great run up until now, though. But I think it goes to show that was a film that nobody really wanted to see a sequel to other than Disney because they were like, man, it made $400 million. Let's go make a sequel. And it just goes to show that even with Johnny Depp returning as the Mad Hatter, and you've got Sacha Baron Cohen, and you've got, Helena Bonham Carter coming back, and Anne Hathaway. You've got all these major characters coming back, but it just wasn't enough. People weren't interested in it.
Yeah. And for some reason, they seem to be stuck on this. They're wanting to do all these live action fairy tale stuff.
Yeah, they got Beauty and the Beast coming, and I'm sure that film will make ridiculous money. But here's newsflash for people: I've never really cared for Beauty and the Beast. I didn't really care for the original animated.
Well, and the other thing too is that, of course, Universal has announced they're doing a Little Mermaid, so of course Disney's like, oh, but we're going to do one too.
But they're going to do their version of it with the music, the Alan Menken stuff, and that's what people know. Yeah. That's the thing. Disney's done such a great job over the years of when you think of certain fairy tales, you immediately think of Disney.
Yeah.
You think of the look of it, the sound of it, and everything. They've really done a beautiful job of doing that. But yeah, I think it just goes to show that nobody really wanted this film, and it kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
The thing is, I didn't care for the Tim Burton Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
I really didn't. I did not think it was a really good movie at all. It felt like, as been my issue with Tim Burton in the past few years, is that it was like a Tim Burton movie.
Yeah.
Tim Burton making a cover album, basically. And I'm tired of that.
And I think Tim Burton's kind of drifting away from
doing his own... Well, he produced this, but he didn't direct it, and that's a good sign. But it definitely looks like the original film that he did. But no, I wasn't looking forward to it. I had no desire to see it, and really I've heard no one talk about that film.
Yeah, it's just not doing well at all, and I'm sure that it's going to drop off pretty quickly.
Oh, I would say so. Yeah.
So basically, going back at 65 million, X-Men Apocalypse at 1, at 28,112,000, we have Alice Through the Looking Glass. The Angry Birds movie drops to 3 at 18,700,000. Captain America: Civil War holds on to spot number 4 with 15,135,000,
which is still amazing money when you've got a film like X-Men Apocalypse coming out the same weekend. You know, that's still great money.
Neighbors 2, which is drops a couple of places from last week at 9,100,000. Jungle Book, hanging on to 6, drops a place to 6,967,000. The Nice Guys drops to number 7 with 6,370,000.
See, that's criminal because that's such a great movie, and I just feel like it's gotten lost in the glut of summer films. And
it has.
You know, it's what I told my parents, and it's what I've told other people: is it's such a breath of fresh air for a summer film. It's not what you think of when you think of summer movies.
Yeah.
It almost feels like a film that should have came out like in September or October. You know, like the time that Pulp Fiction came out, basically. Like something like that, I could see it maybe would have had a little more success. But boy, if you've not had a chance to see the Nice Guys, I mean, man, I can't recommend that film highly enough.
Oh,
It's outstanding.
And at, let's see, at number 9, we've got Love and Friendship, which dropped from 9 to 4. Let's see, it was at, actually it comes up from 14 to 9.
Wow.
At 2,496,000. Now, what's interesting is from 10 on, that's no films made over $1 million from 10 on. Zootopia makes 831,000. The Darkness makes 750,000.
Well, the Darkness dropped quick.
The Lobster finally got a U.S. release, and
I'm very interested to see that too.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's an interesting film. It looks like it's going to be very surreal. So I don't know how that's going to play with American audiences.
I don't think it'll play well at all, but I do want to see it.
But it got a limited release, 725,000.
Which for a limited release is good.
Yeah. The Huntsman Winter War dropped from 9 to 16.
Got crushed.
Yeah, 322 from 9 to 16. So, and Ratchet and Clank, you know, it climbed up a little bit. Yeah, it climbed up a little bit. It was at 24 last. It went up to 19 with 185,000. But, I mean, for all, I mean, there wasn't an awful lot of. I mean, there was some decent money made this weekend, but I mean,
not what you normally would expect from the Memorial Day weekend, that's for sure. But I think it's what we kind of touched on is that the summer movie season seems to start so early now.
Yeah.
That it used to be you didn't see a big movie released before Memorial Day weekend. That was the week, and that's usually like when the X-Men films came out. It was Memorial Day weekend. That was like their spot. And so it seems like now, because again, you know, I mean, you've got films coming out in April. I mean, this year you had Batman v Superman in April.
Yeah.
You know, and in the first weekend of May, you had Captain America: Civil War.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like that film has already been, you know, crossed the $1 billion mark, and we haven't even gotten to Memorial Day.
Yeah.
And I think it's just there's so much already happening.
Right.
And then you got to factor in too, you know, we're just in a different time now. I mean, you know, back in the day of the big push of films in the 2000s, you didn't have Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime. And, you know, people are just as happy to stay home and stream stuff now. You know?
Right.
So yeah, I think that I don't think they can put their eggs in the Memorial Day basket like they used to. I'll say that.
Oh, true. I mean, the summer season tends to start a lot earlier.
Yeah, I mean, it almost feels like it starts in March anymore.
Yeah, well, you know, I blame global warming.
There you go. See, that's all.
Well, I mean, I feel like it started in February this year.
Well, with the Deadpool, yeah, it sure did. Yeah.
You know, so what movies do we got to look forward to this week? Coming up this week, we have Me Before You, starring Emilia Clarke and Sam Claflin. We have Pop Star, Never Stop, Never Stopping.
Never Stop. Yeah, Never
Stop. Never Stop, Never Stopping.
That's
with
the
Andy
Lonely
Samberg,
Island,
Akiva
yeah.
Schaffer, Jorma Tacom, and Sarah Silverman. It'd be interesting. I'd be interested.
Oh,
I
totally want to see that. I love the Lonely Island. They're phenomenal. I love Hot Rod. It's one of the funniest movies I've seen. It's stupid as all get out, but I cackle every time I watch that film. So yeah, I'll totally see Pop Star.
And then finally, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Out of the Shadows.
Which I'm going to say right now is I did not care for the first one at all. Of the new bunch. I am so excited for this one, I can't even tell you. And the reason being is because when they made the first Turtles movie in 1990, is when the cartoon was at its zenith. And, you know, there are certain characters in that cartoon that we loved, the bad guys in particular, Bebop and Rocksteady, Krang, Shredder, you know, the Technodrome and all that crazy stuff. And this film is giving us all of that.
Yep.
Like, there's that part of me that's like, when the film came out in 1990, which I like the original Turtles film, it actually holds up very well.
Yeah.
It's a darker film than you remember it being. And I mean, it's still very colorful and fun for kids, but it's got a little bit of an edge to it. But I was disappointed in it because it didn't have Shredder that I wanted to see, like the real Shredder to me, and it didn't have Krang, and it didn't have Bebop and Rocksteady. And then came Turtles 2, and they had two big monsters to fight, but they weren't Bebop and Rocksteady.
Yeah.
And now we're finally getting Bebop and Rocksteady, and the Technodrome, and foot soldiers that actually look like ninjas and not just dudes from Call of Duty, and Krang, and I'm like, like 13-year-old me is like, I'm finally getting the movie I've been waiting for.
Yeah.
And Cameron's excited. I mean, I'll be taking Cameron to see that. I guarantee I will see that next weekend. But I'm actually looking forward to it. The first film I had so much issue with, the one thing they got right was the nature, the nature of the turtles they got right, their characters they got right.
Right.
The film itself, though, was just garbage. It just didn't work. But this film, because Michael Bay is just in a producer mode, and they've got a new director, and it seems like a director who actually likes the source material. Mm-hmm. The director from the first one, I don't think really did. This feels like the film that I wanted to see back in 1990. My son's tickled to death. I'm actually excited for it, and I didn't think I would ever say that because I really did not like the one from a couple years back.
Yeah.
I really did not. But man, yeah, dude, I'm actually excited for this, and hopefully they will not prove me wrong, and they will deliver a big, crazy, stupid, fun movie.
Well, I'll tell you what, if they mess you up on this one and give you a crappy movie,
they'll be
we'll be filming out of a crater.
Yeah,
We'll be the man
so
crater.
Mad. Like, I'll be so mad because you've got everything. I mean, they've got Bebop. He's got the friggin' mohawk, and he's got the little 80s purple sunglasses, and he looks like Bebop, and Rocksteady looks like Rocksteady, and Krang looks like Krang. He's got the little brain in the stomach, and I'm like, it's crazy.
Well, we'll tune in next week, folks. We'll see what happens.
I mean, really, this is one of the films I've been more excited about this summer than I ever thought I would be.
Yeah.
And I genuinely am looking forward to seeing it. I've even noticed there was a little trailer I saw on Facebook, and it was like, the things turtle people, turtle fans love. And it was like a checklist. And it's like, you got the turtles? Yeah. You got the Shredder? Check. You got Bebop? Check. Rocksteady? Check. Krang? Check. Technodrome? Check. Ooze? Check. And it's like, now you're, and I'm like,
yeah.
I think they figured out that was what they needed to do. And it seems like they were able to say, you know what? People have been saying for years they've been waiting for Bebop and Rocksteady.
Yeah.
And, why don't we just go nuts? Why don't we just kind of forget the first film happened? We've got the designs. Okay, we'll keep that. Although the turtles look a little bit better. I'm not crazy about their designs, but they look a little bit better.
Yeah.
But I think they were like, you know what? Let's just go for broke.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they got the friggin' truck that shoots manhole covers. And
yeah,
it was a friggin' toy. That. I mean, it was an actual toy. It's ridiculous.
You got Casey Jones in this?
Yeah, Casey Jones. And he's played by Arrow. That's friggin' Arrow from the WB show. That's awesome. So, Stephen Amell. So, I mean, like, this film feels like they finally said, you know what? All the Turtles fans have been saying for years that they want this stuff. Let's just make that movie. Let's just make this big-ass crazy film.
Yeah.
And see what happens. And there are times when I'm okay with you taking the shotgun approach.
Yeah.
Just buckshot the wall. Some of the stuff's going to stick, some of it won't, but give it a shot. And I will totally forgive a film for going for broke.
Yeah.
Way more than I will for pulling back.
Yeah.
And this feels like they're just kind of going for broke. And that's what actually has me excited. I'm not even going to lie. I am like my 13-year-old self. Because I still have my original 4 Ninja Turtles figures from 1989.
Yeah.
Still got them. My 13-year-old self is like, man, this is the movie I have been waiting for like my whole life.
Yeah.
And so, I'm totally excited for this movie.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, dude. Fingers crossed. I mean, like, I hope I'm not jinxing it. But I mean, everything I see looks like they took care of all the problems I had from the first one.
Right.
And totally took advantage of the ridiculously crazy universe that cartoon and comic book series offered. And said, you know what, we should just go for broke. Let's just try something different. Let's just see what happens. If we give them what they want and they don't like it, then scrap it. Whatever. I don't know. But I just feel like we're going to get some crazy, cool, fun action, and that's what I've been waiting for.
Oh, yeah.
So, anything else on the list?
That's it for today.
All right. Well, again, as always, for those of you who are watching us, thank you so much for taking time to join us here on The Man Attic. And again, please leave your comments below of things you'd like to talk about. If you did get to see X-Men Apocalypse, what did you think? And please, if you are going to mention spoilers, please make sure you mention that in the heading of your topic so that nobody gets that ruined for them. Because there really are some really cool moments that if you've not seen the trailers, and don't watch them, I'm going to tell you, there are some really great moments that you don't want to have spoiled. So please make sure to like and subscribe. Share this on your pages if you're a fan of movie critiques. Share our stuff out there. We'd love to have more people involved in the discussion. But thank you for taking time to join us as always. Brian, any final words before we head out?
That's it for now.
Okay, well, that'll do it for this edition of The Real Deal. We will see you next week with a look at some other big films. I'm sure we'll be talking about Ninja Turtles, and I'm hoping we'll be talking about Popstar as well, so hopefully we'll be able to get on those for you. But until then, I'm Kevin Polly.
And I'm Brian Hatcher.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week with another edition of The Real Deal.